If you go to a market and buy 1 kilogram of a product, you pay a set price. Buy 100 kilograms, and the seller cuts you a deal. For decades, heavy industries like railways, airlines, and massive transport fleets have relied on this basic math. They consume thousands of liters of diesel every day, and in return, they expect a significant wholesale discount. But inside India's fuel market, this universal rule of commerce has recently completely inverted. This chart shows the current discrepancy. If you pull a car up to a pump in Delhi, a liter of diesel costs around 90 rupees. But if you are a bulk industrial buyer, that exact same liter now costs 140. Faced with an abrupt 50% markup on wholesale fuel, corporate buyers responded with simple logic. They flatly refused to pay it. Transport managers with fleets of 50 or 100 trucks simply ordered their drivers to bypass the wholesale depots. Instead, they sent their heavy fleets to fill up at local neighborhood petrol stations to exploit the cheaper consumer rate. This massive pricing gap is creating a physical bottleneck, forcing the nation's heavy industrial demand through neighborhood pumps designed for cars and motorcycles. To understand how prices got distorted, we have to look at the open ocean. Conflict in West Asia severely destabilized global crude oil supply chains. The financial shockwave hit the markets immediately, and global crude prices spiked, approaching $125 a barrel. India officially deregulated diesel prices in 2014. In a standard deregulated system, when international crude gets more expensive, both consumer and industrial fuel prices naturally float upward to match the cost of supply. But the government faces domestic realities. With critical state elections approaching in regions like Kerala and West Bengal, allowing fuel prices to jump and trigger nationwide inflation was politically toxic. So, policymakers made a calculation. They enacted a strict freeze on retail prices, prioritizing immediate political stability and shielding everyday voters from the reality of global oil markets. The problem is that absorbing that loss across the entire economy is impossibly expensive. The government realized that while voters notice when the neighborhood pump gets more expensive, industrial fuel costs are largely invisible to the public. This graph illustrates the resulting split policy. Consumer retail prices were locked in place, while bulk diesel prices for industry floated upward alongside the global crude market. Because those markets were artificially separated, a massive 50 rupee gap tore open between them. Now put yourself in the position of a logistics director running a massive fleet of transport trucks. Buying wholesale suddenly carries an extreme financial penalty. You pivot your corporate strategy immediately. You abandon your wholesale depot contracts, and you send every single truck into the suburbs to fuel up at consumer stations. When a government artificially distorts a pricing model, rational actors will override the intended design of the market to exploit the gap. The entities absorbing the financial impact of this shift are the oil marketing companies, the refiners responsible for importing and distributing the nation's fuel. Because of the political freeze, these companies are currently mandated to sell every liter of retail diesel at a severe loss. Normally, they survive this constraint by cross-subsidizing. The high profits they make selling to captive industrial buyers cover the losses at the retail pumps. But with corporate fleets defecting to retail, that vital revenue stream has completely dried up. This flowchart maps the physical infrastructure problem. India built 2 parallel networks, a high-volume channel specifically for heavy industry, and a lower-volume pipeline meant strictly for everyday consumer traffic. But right now, massive industrial demand is violently rerouting directly into the fragile consumer pipeline. The ground-level consequence is a logistical short-circuit. Small neighborhood pumps are entirely unequipped for industrial-scale demand, and many are quickly running dry. As the oil marketing companies watch their balance sheets disintegrate under the weight of selling millions of liters at a loss, the government will be forced to intervene with massive subsidies to prevent a systemic collapse. Trying to artificially shield the consumer at the pump creates an illusion. The actual cost of the fuel hasn't changed. The government is simply taking the massive financial burden of the global oil market and quietly shifting it directly onto the taxpayer.